Hello, everyone. Hello. First of all, I like to thank Martin and the other colleagues for the invitation to this conference, for the wonderful opportunity I was offered to participate. Unfortunately, I don't know a single word in Czech, except for cappuccino, espresso, and latte macchiato. And I'm sorry about that, but I have to say that yesterday I clearly felt a truly amazing commitment between you, enthusiasm and vitality, and for this I thank you. My contribution will just focus on one of the aspects of the recovery-oriented practices. Other colleagues will talk about this better than me, and it comes from my experience, personal experience, over 40 years of work in mental health field. In these years, I have fortunately been characterized by exciting experiences, which I am also lucky enough to share with you today, but which have often been also crossed by doubts and criticalities. I think that in the field of mental health, criticalities are inevitable. Trying to deny them or ignore them, I think, is quite dangerous, because it is a field fraught by pitfalls and potential misunderstandings, as the history of these 40 or 50 years teach us. For this reason, I would like to start with a brief recap of these last decades to arrive to a synthesis. Starting from which we try to understand what can really be transformative and revolutionary in the recovery model, but what, at the same time, can, on the contrary, generate misunderstandings. I think it's a sea in which we sail by sight, so we need to have a compass, systematically question ourselves on the route we are traveling. I think it's legitimate to identify the beginning of the story in the 70s of the last century. Curiously, in the same period, we can trace the origins of two great expectations. The first is represented by the vigor with which the biomedical model in psychiatry has been reproposed, on the basis of which the conviction has spread that research in neuroscience would lead to definitive clarity on the causes of mental disorders and therefore on the possibility of specific treatment. The outcome of these expectations could be summarized in a thematic issue of the journal World Psychiatry on 2010, which is the official journal of the World Psychiatric Association, which published a forum attended by former WPA presidents, entitled, which is amazing title of the forum, and listing a number of reasons for this concern. But I will only add other equally authoritative opinions. Can you see on this slide the cure rates of the patient after the introduction of antipsychotic drugs are no better than those hospitalized in the previous decades. Another important news is that we thought in the 90s then the brain shrinkage was the consequence of the illness, no? But recently has become evident that the shrinkage is caused by the antipsychotics. No? This is Nancy Andreasen, which is an authoritative, influential psychiatrist in the United States. Oh, the same from Thomas Hinsel, who was director of the most important institution of mental health in the USA. Or Alan Francis, which was chair of the DSM, no? The famous manual, diagnostic manual. And the other expectation in the 70s was the transition from the anti-institutional movement. No? But the process of transformation, this radical transformation, has been fragmented and complicated. Its implementation has been carried out only in several Western countries, often only partially, and not preceded by realistic and adequate planning. And as we will see better, since the thousands, an unexpected phenomenon has had to be acknowledged. This is the number of beds, which is an indicator, no, of the situation. We can see the higher number of beds in psychiatric beds in some countries in Europe. So this is what happened in some way. Until 90s, there was a decline of the number of beds in hospital, but then there was an increase, progressive increase of new hospitals, but also another kind of long stay in residential facilities, which is a word that covers many, many meanings and difficult to control and to have an idea what happened in them. This is an official document. So the situation in Europe is the implementation of community mental care shows a great cross-country variation. Many states still use mental hospitals, others embrace a balanced care model. The data about quality and variation in service definition hinder a comprehensive analysis. So it's difficult to evaluate, to assess the situation in each country. And after all, since the mid-90s, the reduction in beds in hospital has been followed by an increase of residential rehabilitation facilities. But there are many misunderstandings, I think, about the concept, the rehabilitation. No? Because from the beginning, the psychosocial rehabilitation has developed on the model of physical motor rehabilitation. No? This was an involuntary, there was an intention, it was a natural phenomenon. This implies the use of techniques that involve gradual and prudent step-by-step paths. Only if one level has been reached can you move on to the next. No? So this model fundamentally is based on the deficit, on assess the deficit. The competence gap of paternalistic medicine remains. The professional is attributed with knowing what is the best for the patients. And please be careful to understand well this concept. The gap must maintain it above all to give meaning to the professional role of the professional, not for in the interest of the patient. And in general refers to different things, but in any way understood as something someone does to someone else. No? Learning techniques is defined in time-limited settings, and the other version, the new version, the more recent version of rehabilitation, in residential stay at various levels of care and daycare rehabilitation centers. No? This is, for example, the translation is Google Translator, so I don't know if you can understand, but this is a patient who asks to instruct or operator what was the real job, because the patient couldn't understand the concept of rehabilitation in that way. And the outcome was very weak, because a learning process, psychopedagogical process, works. But the problem is the application of the skills in the real world. No? Because this depends on the possibility to having concrete opportunities, for example, a home or a job, no? In the real world, outside the learning setting. And the contemporary scenario is a sort of endless rehabilitation, because the name of the facilities, no? Contains always the word rehabilitation. No? Even if the patient stay for 40 years, it's an endless rehabilitation. It's to justify the permanence of these facilities. No? This is very, very dangerous misunderstandings, because people are segregated in these facilities with the task of rehabilitation and inclusion, social inclusion, but it is not true. About 1/3 of people are defined as complex psychosis in the recent terminology, and the time-limited rehabilitation techniques now is played in the long-term place of stay. And then there has been an exponential growth and a progressive extension of the length of stay. And the large part of these facilities are contracted out to the private sector, which has every interest in keeping patients for as long as possible in place far from their community, many kilometers, also 100 kilometers from their home, their friends, their family, for an endless rehabilitation. And social inclusion, the most serious consequence of this scenario is that the more treatment and rehabilitation are provided, the further away the prospect of a normal life and social inclusion becomes. As the years go by, patients end up passively adapting to the life of the institution, so-called non-protesting patients, because they internalize the stigma. The stigma is not just by the society, but inside the world, the internal world of the patient. For these people, a psychiatric institution, again, become toxic. So there are the point I would like to focus. There are enemies of recovery, I think, because first of all, the dominance, the hegemony of the biomedical approach and paternalism, the organization culture, something I call soft coercion, the professionals' attitudes, the infantilization and pathologization, and something like small things. I will explain what I mean. And the problem of empowerment and disempowerment. This is a case in England in which recently they discovered that there was 1,000 of patients admitted and stay in rehabilitation locked facilities, no? Which is a paradox, no? How a rehabilitation unit could be locked, no? But this is a consequence of the privatization, no? Because they have this industry has about 20%. 5 minutes? Okay. It's a matter of money at the end. No? They earn very. The cost is 2 billion pounds per year in England. Okay, human rights. There are many documents, many recommendations. We know the very important declarations and statements you can see, as very progressive and very democratic declaration, but difficult to translate in the everyday practice. And paradoxically, the abundance of the declaration, the poverty of results is evident. It's more than it's more rather an obligation dictated by political correctness. The organization culture shapes the knowledge and the attitude of professional and thus the interpersonal interaction with people with mental illness. This is another study in which the results indicate that diagnostic organization culture for stigmatization and risk pathologization, limiting patient self-determination. Empowerment seems to perceive it as something granted by staff at their discretion. There are many kind of invisible power in the institutions. We have no time enough to specify, but you can see it's quite comprehensible. Once again, the voice of the insane have been and continue to be not heard, overwritten, silenced, or even erased in the course of psychiatric treatment. This is recent studies. And the story of Marco Vanna, two very difficult patients, and he suffered of 10 compulsory hospitalization, and from 2008 they had a story very similar, and this own to his own, and they got engaged. No? Since then, their condition has surprisingly improved. In 2010, they moved on an independent flat. So, to explain this phenomenon, can help us Claude Bernard, who was the founder of experimental medicine in the many years ago. because an event of the life could be more powerful than treatments, rehabilitation, no? I think you have seen this phenomenon in your work. And sometimes Marco has a relapse, no? But in this case, Marco has delusions and decided to go to the hospital, no? Intentionally. The doctor was surprised to meet him after 10 years, no? And was angry for this. Anyway, at the end, Marco was admitted. After 3 days, Marco felt better, no? So asked the doctor to be discharged, but it was impossible now. Huh? I have heard many times from colleagues this. What do you do? What do you want? Excuse me. You want to do what you want, but no. Which you know. You do what you want in your life, you know? You do what you want, or not. It's strange because a patient couldn't do what he wants, no? I think it's important. There is another phenomenon, 2 minutes, very interesting. Because this is very hidden, no? In everyday practice, it's difficult to control, it's difficult to monitor, but are little things that could be very dangerous for the patient, for the self-esteem, for dignity, no? And the professional do it with the good intention, no? The infantilization is made with good intentions, but it's very dangerous. This is the first day at the center of a patient, and the doctor asks, tell me the story of your illness, no? It's the first question, no? And the patient is perplexed, and the psychologist, this is a true story, the psychologist proposed to participate in a radio entitled Crazy News, no? And in other words, psychiatry asked the patient to admit to be unlucky, is imaginated person, no? A bad identity, no? To be treated, the patient have to accept to be, how is the word for unlucky? In Italian is sfigato, cioè, a person without value, denigrated, no? And this is this process of infantilization. Okay, I'm finishing. The small things and macro and micro confirmation and disconfirmation. The dignity of risk. This is important. I have to go away. This is quoting Patricia Deegan. You can take the horse to the river, but he doesn't have to drink. The horse drinks when it is thirsty, and we need more than good quality service, and this something more is what we call recovery. Something more, in my experience, is patience, tact, tolerance of limits, and attitude to imperfection. Could be a paradox, but in my experience is true. Thank you for the patience. Thank you. Thank you.